Before we begin, just a disclaimer that I was provided a review copy of Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled for this video. All footage you'll see, unless stated otherwise, will be the Switch version. So if you want to see a visual comparison between the Switch version and other console versions, I'll redirect you to the link in the top right. This video is going to be focusing on comparing the original CTR to Nitro-Fueled. Crash Team Racing was the fourth and final Naughty Dog developed Crash game, and they wanted to do the Bandicoot justice before signing off of him. It offered a different kind of racing experience from other kart races at the time with a unique drifting mechanic. The way drift boosting worked helped add a higher skill floor and ceiling than the competition. There's no wrong way to play CTR, though while these versions feel and play strikingly similarly, there's some differences with the goal of each game. We'll get into that much later, but CTR Nitro-Fueled was a love letter remaster to the original that was led by developers who loved the original game. Crash Team Racing by Naughty Dog was released on the PlayStation in 1999, and is available digitally on PS3 and PSP. Now each regional version of the game is a different revision of the previous version, so we're going to go through each in order. First came the NTSC release. Nitrous Oxide was cut in development from being playable, quoted for being physically too big to race and they couldn't fit him into the game's memory during multiplayer. Penta the Penguin and Fake Crash were only unlockable by cheat codes, and Penta was added really late in development. Penta actually had the same stats as Polar and Pura, and when they got the mass power up, the icon would show Uka Uka, and he still has placeholder voice lines in the game. But all of the adventure mode bosses can be unlocked by beating them in the gem races in adventure mode. Then lastly, Entropy was unlocked by beating all of his times in time trial. And then if you beat all of Nitrous Oxide's time trials, you unlock the scrapbook. Meanwhile, there was one track and 3 arenas that were unlockable as well. The default best times in this version are all at 9 hours and 59 minutes. Keep all that in mind as we move forward, but the next version released was the PAL version, and like I said, it wasn't just localized, but it was updated. Penta is still unlockable via cheats, but now he's more of a finished character. The mask icon is now Aku Aku, there are no placeholder lines, and his stats are maxed out. The PAL version supported multiple languages, but in order to fit all of them on the disc, the scrapbook had to be shortened. Time trial times were no longer at 9 hours and 59 minutes and were actual times. During adventure mode, the names of areas would now show at the bottom of the screen. While gameplay remained the same, one mechanical difference is that you have shorter jump height in the PAL version compared to NTSC and NTSC-J. Speaking of which, the next release was the NTSC-J version, and if you've never seen a Japanese Crash game, get ready. Crash was a different beast in Japan, and this game came with its own myriad of changes in the Japanese version. The NTSC-J version was based off of the PAL version and all of its bug fixes, and the cheat codes to play Penta and play the Spyro 2 demo were changed. There's also now a counter for chain turbos on the UI, which was in the NTSC and PAL versions, but it was a cheat code. Tracks also now have a difficulty rating. Ripperoo speaks Japanese now, as opposed to his stock laugh from his original appearance. TNT doesn't say TNT anymore, and all of the trophy girls now have brown eyes. And the scrapbook returns, although it's longer than the PAL version, it is still slightly modified. And lastly, all of the Japanese Crash games have a secret bonus video you can find by inputting a button combo during the PlayStation boot logo. And now we move on to Crash Team Racing Nitro-Fueled, released on the PS4, Xbox One, and Switch by Beenox. The philosophy behind this remaster was to uphold the original's controls and the track layouts. Unlike the Insane Trilogy, Nitro-Fueled didn't use the original geometry of levels. While some assets were used from the Insane Trilogy, many were made from scratch. This includes all of the tracks, karts, racers, and their skins who didn't have models in the Insane Trilogy. The developers would play CTR on PSX and then drop the controller and immediately play Nitro-Fueled just to get the feeling accurate. They wanted to get to a point where muscle memory would transfer. In other words, while controls and tracks aren't exactly one-to-one with the original, they're really close to it. The drift boost mechanic as well as how reserves worked are retained in Nitro-Fueled. Now at the same time as all this, they wanted to enhance the aesthetic and bringing in plenty more modern content. I won't go into too much detail about it, but Nitro-Fueled is actively receiving post-launch content. We're going to be sticking to the base game's content though for the sake of comparison. CTR Nitro-Fueled doesn't just pull its content from CTR, but also from Crash Nitro Kart. All of the racers, tracks, battle arenas, karts, and modes, including mirror mode, are in the base game. On top of that, excluding characters and tracks, some content is actually coming from Crash Tag Team Racing, including some karts and skins. And all tracks, arenas, and modes are unlocked from the start. The original Crash Team Racing tracks are made from scratch, though they are intended to be as faithful as possible in their layout. Meanwhile, Crash Nitro Kart tracks were heavily modified and scaled to be more consistent with the original CTR tracks in terms of length and speed. And they've also had all of their anti-gravity sections removed. You unlock the same characters in Adventure mode, but just from beating them instead of doing the gem cups. Instead, the gem cups now unlock skins for the bosses and fake Crash. Meanwhile, you still have to beat Entropy's times and time trials to unlock him. And you unlock the scrapbook simply by beating the adventure mode. This scrapbook is totally new as well. Penta is actually still unlocked via the same cheat code as the original, and as a nod to the original game, Penta can be heard saying the original placeholder lines. And when he gets a mask item, it's random whether it'll be Aku Aku or Uka Uka. And he also now shares his stats with Dingodile and Tiny. Along with them, Nitrous Oxide is now playable after being cut, and you can unlock him by beating Adventure mode. Now in the original game, when you won and were on a podium, we'd see the trophy girls, but they're not there anymore. Instead, they're actually playable, and they all exhibit new distinct personalities. And Tawna is also a new playable character as well. And a collection of cheat codes that were basically modifiers are still in, though they now disable achievements. The game now features a couple of new modes. Now there's online multiplayer, which lets you do races and battles with friends or matchmaking. And one of the biggest additions to this version of the game is all of the customization. The game is full of character skins and colors, karts, body paints, decals, wheels, and stickers to unlock now. All of these are unlocked by playing the adventure mode, participating in the Grand Prix, or buying them in the pit stop. Speaking of, the pit stop is a single page of cosmetics and a character you can purchase with Wumpa coins. You earn Wumpa coins from either playing the game or with real money. The content in the shop rotates daily. Now there was one major change to Adventure mode. You now have the option to pick between Classic or Nitro-Fueled. Classic means no customization and no changing characters. You've got to play through the entire Adventure mode as one character like you did originally. And when you play Nitro-Fueled, you have full customization whenever you want, plus difficulty options. There's now 3 different versions of the Nitro UI. You can change between them in the menu or press triangle. There's also now an option to see your tires heat up to let you know when to boost. What's great about the new UI though is that it lets you see exactly when you'll get the best possible boost for your reserve. Now let's talk about aesthetics. There was a big focus on enhancing the details found within tracks. While the track layouts are identical, if we pay attention to the surroundings, we'll see how much was added to the tracks. Beenox approached each track with the question, what is this track supposed to be about? Let's look at some examples. And we've got to talk about the massive upgrade in animation quality. Models are now fully rigged and allow for facial animation and nuanced details that were not originally possible.
Well, Nitrous Oxide, I'm the fastest racer in the galaxy. I travel the stars looking for creatures to test my skills. It's a little game I call Survival of the Fastest.
Well, I, Nitrous Oxide, am the fastest racer in the galaxy. I travel the stars looking for creatures to test my skills. It's a little game I call Survival of the Fastest.
There's also a new remastered soundtrack, and the original composers were brought in as consultants. if it's not your thing, there is still an option for the original soundtrack. Now there is some PS4 exclusive content, for now at least. PS4 version features low-poly models of Crash, Coco, and Cortex, with matching carts, and a retro-themed bonus track. Nitro-Fueled is also liable to receive balance patches as well in the future, leading to potential mechanical differences. For example, in the past patch notes, there were adjustments to the global cooldown of power-ups on all players to prevent trophy clock and warp orb spamming. Most items have subtle balancing changes too. Generally, hit stun or effects from items don't last as long as in the original. Not anything major though, the difference is usually roughly several frames. The load times in Nitro-Fueled can be up to more than twice as long as the original game, and I don't think that's acceptable at all. The core difference between the two isn't how one feels or plays compared to the other, but it's more about what you want from each game that sets them apart. One can set a clear end goal for the player in terms of content to experience and unlock. The other, while offering a continuous flow of content, has a goal of keeping you coming back to it a lot. It's adopted a more games-as-a-service approach. The Grand Prix is basically a season where you have an XP meter you fill and unlock things along the way. Expect to put a ton of time into actually reaching the end of the gold tier if you aren't planning to AFK farm or just throw money at things you want in the shop. For some, this is no big deal though, as we've seen the CTR content from the original game is all there. The Grand Prix is irrelevant to all that. Feel free to share your thoughts on this or any other comparisons between the games. And until next time, thank you for watching.